As much as we love boss fights, and we really do, and as much as we would like to see more developers try and deliver memorable encounters against big bad enemies, we know that they are no means a prerequisite for a great game. Over the years, in fact, there's been no shortage of profoundly engaging and unforgettable experiences that haven't had boss fights whatsoever, and here we'll be talking about a few such examples. Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. In the early years of the Uncharted series, Naughty Dog tried to cram boss fights into the games, and the results were mixed. Decent at best, atrocious at worst, but always unnecessary. As time has gone on, Uncharted has stopped feeling the need to have any boss fights at all, and its last entry, The Lost Legacy, relegated its final confrontation against the villain to a glorified interactive cutscene. And you know what? That was absolutely the right choice. Uncharted has always been about its cinematicism, storytelling, and blockbuster action more than anything else, and The Lost Legacy was a better game for its decision to focus on that rather than ticking the boss fights box. Red Dead Redemption 2. Rockstar's games have never really bothered with boss fights, especially when it comes to the developer's open-world crime epics, and Red Dead Redemption 2, as the mother of all open-world crime epics, is singularly focused on its vision, which of course doesn't have much room for a traditional boss encounter, or even an untraditional one to be fair. Its gorgeous, massive open world, its cast of excellent written and acted characters, and its riveting story are more than enough to keep players engaged throughout the game's long runtime. Meanwhile, the fact that you get to pummel Micah Bell's face in a mano-a-mano duel also softens the blow of not being able to go up against the game's baddies in set-piece boss encounters. Grand Theft Auto 5. Of course, if we're crediting Red Dead Redemption 2 in a list such as this one, we have to credit Grand Theft Auto 5 as well, which is even more of a behemoth in its genre in more ways than one. GTA as a whole has never really been concerned with putting its players in duels against major enemies that test players' skills, and like any of its predecessors, neither is GTA 5. And honestly, when you're having an absolute blast with the game's missions or wreaking chaotic havoc in its open-world sandbox, boss fights are the last thing that are on your mind. Halo Reach. Unlike some other franchises on this list, Halo has tried its hand at boss fights every now and then over the years, and though some of those encounters have been pretty decent, the series' overall quality in that area has been inconsistent. Halo Reach smartly sidestepped that problem by not having any boss fights at all. Noble Team's hopeless battle to save Reach from the destructive forces of the Covenant is a dramatic and eventful one, and offers up one memorable moment after another, even in the absence of any bosses that need to be taken down. The fact that, in spite of that perceived void, it manages to deliver one of the best Halo campaigns ever should really tell you something about the game. Outer Wilds. We've sung the praises of Outer Wilds numerous times here at GamingBolt, but this is the sort of game that can never be praised enough. Not only did it come out at a time when time loop premises weren't as common as they have been in recent months, it also leveraged that premise ingeniously to deliver an outstanding story told in a spectacularly captivating manner. Easily one of the most memorable games we've played in a long time. And obviously it didn't need any boss fights to get to that level. Disco Elysium. Disco Elysium is a very unusual RPG. Not only does it not have boss fights, it doesn't have any combat whatsoever. It puts all of its emphasis squarely on its role-playing mechanics, choice and consequence mechanics, and its excellent setting, bolstering it with excellently written characters and lore and backstories that you can pore over for hours and hours on end. The fact that you can go through its entire 20 to 30 hour story without even noticing that there's no combat in the game, much less feel its absence, should tell you everything you need to know about how good this game is at what it does. Inside. Games are often criticized for being too scripted, too linear, and too short. Playdead's stellar horror adventure Inside is extremely scripted, completely linear, and quite short, and yet it's still one of the best games you'll ever play. It delivers one chilling encounter after another, one devilishly horrific scene on top of another, all of it leading up to and culminating in a horrifying, shocking ending that will stay with you long, long after you're done with the game. A game that is that good at invoking that kind of a visceral reaction as Inside has no need for any boss fights. Celeste. Platformers in general don't usually lean on boss fights as much as some other genres of games do, though of course that doesn't mean that there haven't been several of them over the years that have had great bosses. Celeste is not one of them, and yet it still stands head and shoulders above most games in the genre. Pixel-perfect platforming, excellent level design, gorgeous pixel art, perfectly balanced challenge, and a surprisingly moving story all come together in a game that instantly cemented itself as an all-time classic the moment it came out. Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus. Technically, you could call the fight against the Zerstörer super soldiers on the Ausmerzer close to Wolfenstein 2's end as a boss fight, but the game lacks the kind of proper set-piece boss encounters that its predecessor, The New Order, had a handful of. And yet, even so, it's an absolutely fantastic game. Machine Game Shooter tells a riveting story, and tells it expertly with slick cutscenes and endearing characters, while on the gameplay side of things, its tight gunplay and brutal action always keep players on their toes. The fact that you never get to take on Irene Engel in a traditional boss fight the way you fought Death's Head in the first game is a bit disappointing, but in spite of that, Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus emerges as a brilliant, unforgettable experience. Desperados 3. Rather than try to cram a boss fight into its runtime to appease players who might be looking for something like that, Desperados 3, like pretty much every other game on this list, chooses to focus on what it's good at. From its brilliantly designed maps to its engaging tactical gameplay, from the engaging stealth to using the full breadth of your team and all characters' abilities to overcome devilish obstacles, Desperados 3 has more than enough going for it to keep players raptly occupied from beginning to end. And that brings us to the end of the video. A quick request before we conclude though. We upload new videos every single day, and if you like what we're doing, please consider subscribing. It really helps us out. Also, don't forget to enable all notifications by clicking the bell icon so that you can receive daily video updates. Thanks for watching.